Good. Hello, welcome to Recovery Talk Live with Comprehensive Wellness Centers. I'm here with Gary Kay, our Director of Recovery Education, and Mark Astor, attorney. Tell us about attorney, and I know you are
drug and alcohol
attorney with, and we're going to be talking about the Marchman Act with you today,
right?
And some other things that you've been talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah,
really
thank you for being here.
I was flattered that Gary asked me. It's nice to meet you.
Yes.
And you know, I am an attorney, but when people ask me what I do, I tell them what we do is we help families and individuals who are in emotional crisis because of addiction and mental illness. So yeah, I'm a lawyer, and we use the legal system to help families, but I think it's a very small part of what we do.
Okay.
We really are all about helping to put the family unit back together and coming up with a plan of action.
Well, we're really happy to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gary's told me a lot of good things about you, and
He's
I have
an amazing man.
I have a lot of questions to ask you about some of the topics. So I can't wait. We're going to wait a little bit here while we have some people coming into the room. Welcome, Bella and Paul.
Hello, Bella and Paul.
Looks like Carol Hoffman's here.
Hi, Carol.
Rosanna. Hey, Rosanna. When are you going to come visit us here? So again, we're here with Comprehensive Wellness Centers. We're a treatment center here in South Florida, Lantana area. We offer PHP, IOP. We have our own historian here in AA.
I'm a 12-step historian. I also write books for Hazelden Publishing. My most recent book, Walk the Talk, was Step 12, Staying Sober Through Service. And I'm a 12-step historian. And with our clients while they're in PHP, we do step work with them. Instead of talking about it, we actually take them through the process.
And please like and share us so we can get as many people in here as possible to spread the message about what we're trying to do here at in treatment and recovery in general. Hey, Tanner.
Tanner.
He said Gary's still the man.
You're very kind. I'm proud of you, Tanner.
And Nick here. Nick, share with everybody. Good to see you join us early this time. Like and share, everybody. So, Mark, when I hear drug and alcohol attorney, what does that even mean? Why would someone come to you for, obviously drug and alcohol, but what type of cases or what type of people do you see?
We spend a lot of time with crying mums and dads.
Okay.
So
crying mums and dads.
Yeah. So families typically call me when they're sort of at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. They've had a child, and when I say child, I mean son or daughter who's typically 18 to 30 years of age, who is in addiction, is having a problem with drugs. Sometimes it's mental illness going along with that. And either they won't stay in recovery or they won't go to treatment in the first place, and they just don't know what to do. And they've heard about me through perhaps folks like you, or they've read about me because I put a lot of content out on social media trying to spread the word about what we're trying to do and the people that we're trying to help. And they call me and they're like, we need help, what can we do? So, we put together a plan of action. So I like being called the drug and alcohol attorney. I think we do a lot more than just the attorneys, but...
So you're dealing more with the family as opposed to maybe a drug kingpin that you're defending? So it's more family drug and alcohol than you're actually then you're actually dealing with defending a drug dealer or something like that.
Right.
Or do you do DUI?
I do. So we all know that the disease of addiction only gets worse with time, right? It never gets better if you don't take any action to prevent it from getting any better. And as a result, there's only one of three places that someone who has an addiction or mental illness can go, right? They're either going to be dead. They're going to the morgue, right? And we know that from the statistics all over the country. People are dying at record levels from addiction, the heroin laced.
We're in a full-blown epidemic, pandemic.
Absolutely. So they're going to either be dead, they're either going to go to prison, because unfortunately, addicts tend to lie, cheat, and steal. Not because they're bad, but because that's the nature of the disease, right? They just don't make very smart decisions.
Absolutely.
And they don't think rationally. Or they're going to go to treatment. So, those are the three options, right? So, unfortunately, option number one I can't help you with. I wish I could. I'm working on it, but not yet. Haven't come up with a solution. So that means sometimes I'm in criminal court, right? Sometimes I'm in criminal court. I do a little bit of DUI. I spent the bulk of my career, 20 plus years, working in the criminal justice system, on both sides of the courtroom, and I realized pretty early on that most people there are there because of addiction and mental illness. So So sometimes I'm in criminal court, but more often than not, I'm either in Marchman court or we do guardianship work too. So, you know, we're working to get people into treatment so they don't end up either dead or in prison.
Marchman court, that's a fascinating tool.
I don't want to go there yet,
Act.
though.
Okay, you got it.
We'll work into that, but
Gary's holding me back because he knows
Yeah.
I love to talk about the Marchman
Yeah,
Act.
it's real. It's
I
a
know
fascinating thing.
that's definitely exciting. But tell me why. I mean, you might have touched on it already, but is there any personal history as to why you wanted to get into drug and alcohol?
Sure. You know, I spent the first 5 years as a lawyer from basically 1993 and 94 through 1999 being a prosecutor here in Palm Beach County. Didn't pay very well, but it was an amazingly satisfying job, right? Because every day I went home and felt like I, you know, tried to get a little justice for a family or a victim or whatever it was. And then after 99, when I was a little burned out, I left, and really for a period of time, probably close to 15 years, I was really miserable being a lawyer. I did a lot of defense work, dabbled in other things. I went through a divorce, so I took a year off, went back to school to get a master's degree, that was in DC. I also got to work on a presidential campaign because I needed some purpose in my life, right? I needed to feel like I was contributing in some way. I came back, so that would have been 2005. Stayed for some time and then went to California for 3 years. Took the California bar 3 times and failed it 3 times. So I figured at that point, in addition to the fact I was basically broke by that point, I figured the universe was trying to tell me something. And it was time to come back to Florida. And my father had gotten sick, so I came back to Florida. And I ended up getting a job with a company down in Miami that taught lawyers the business side of the practice. Because they don't teach us anything about how to get a client through the front door. They just teach us how to practice law, and they don't do a great job doing that either. But what it really was, it was a personal growth company, right? Their philosophy was that financial growth had to be preceded by personal growth. And I'd never been exposed to anything like that. And it was like somebody took the blinkers off, and I suddenly realized that, one, I was responsible for my own happiness, and two, the world didn't revolve around me, right? And so after a year of working with solo and small law firm practitioners, the founder of the company came to me and said, I can see you're not happy. What's the matter? And I said, well, I've been a lawyer 20 plus years now. It's time finally to do my own thing. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, you know, I've been a prosecutor, been a defense lawyer. I think I'm going to probably open up my own practice, you know, doing criminal work. And he said, well, that's nice, but it's not real sexy. And, you know, there's a million criminal lawyers out there. What else might make you get out of bed in the morning? And I said, well, I know this sounds strange. I said, but I noticed throughout my life I'm surrounded by people in recovery. He said, well, why don't you build your business helping those people? And I said, I can do that. He said, I don't know, you're a lawyer, go figure it out. So I went online, found the Marchman Act, saw there was only a couple other lawyers doing it. They didn't have my courtroom experience, they weren't criminal practitioners, and I felt like my life experience, my experience, everything I'd done as a lawyer up to that point had really gotten me to the point, you know, where I was like, okay, I think I can do this, and I think I can do it better than anybody else because I understand the dynamics of how, you know, this addiction and mental illness works from a legal perspective. And I think I can help a lot of families. And now that, you know, I've had my lobotomy, I realized the only way to really be happy as a lawyer is to build a business helping other people. And now I'm going to do that. And so that's what I did.
Sounds to me this is a spiritual path that you're on, actually. That you're
That's probably a good word. You know,
giving yourself in service.
You might be a little more spiritual than me, Gary.
You're looking at, you know, helping people is what you really want to do, and,
Yeah.
and the people that you're helping are ill.
I do, and it really motivates me to get out of bed in the morning. And you know, I'm you know, we helped a lot of people in year 1. We're now coming to the end of year 2. We helped twice as many people this year as we did the first year, and my goal is to help 4 times as many people in year 3. So
You helped recently a very good friend of mine.
I want to say hi to a couple. I want to say we'll get into that because I want to hear about that. I want to say hi to Mandy. Mandy's here. Mark is here. Mark Klutchkin.
Wonderful.
Ashley Lynn is here. So she says, "Hey, Jason and Gary.
Hi, Ashley.
Where are you? Up in North Carolina, Tennessee, somewhere there."
Oh, that's where she
Yeah, I
is?
think so. Ashley, come home, right? You want to
Yeah,
come home?
we miss you.
We miss you. Paul and Bella say all families should definitely look into the Marchman Act here in Florida. It can save a loved one's life. And so you were just talking about that. See how I segue in there?
That's beautiful.
See that?
You're the best.
Question right into you.
You're the best.
So go ahead and now let's...
When Carson retired, they should have
I'm
rushed him.
turning it over to you a little bit here, and
Okay.
why don't you talk about that a little bit?
And I don't want to break anonymity. A dear friend who I had worked with also as a counselor and a sponsor. I'm in recovery 21 years, and I was his sponsor, and he relapsed in a wicked way, in an epic way. And I know his parents, and they're probably watching, I would imagine. And we were all beside ourselves. This particular relapse changed him in a dramatic way. And he went from being a kind, gentle gentleman to an absolute beast. And something had to stop him. It was either going to be death or handcuffs. That's all that could happen. He'd already died a number of times. This is a guy who, in a previous relapse, had died twice in the same day. He died, they Narcaned him, an hour later he died again, and they Narcaned him again. That's the kind of addict he is when he's in his active addiction, and we knew he was going to die. And he had already basically died on his front porch before we contacted you. And his parents called me in desperation. I said, I know exactly what needs to happen. We need to call Mark Astor and file for Marchman Act. And I helped educate them a little bit about what that is, and that saved his life. Not only does it save his life, for the first time, this guy is highly intelligent. And he's been to treatment a number of times, but he would never stay very long, not long enough for it to gel, or to actually really get the work done that needed to be done in a safe way. And because of the Marchman Act, he was in treatment for several months. And it was the time that he needed to be in treatment to complete the work, and a shift happened. I think also having the marshals show up and walk into his bedroom, was a very humbling experience. And having to go out of his gated community and get in a sheriff's car, and for this guy, that was really hitting bottom for him, and it woke him up. And he's a different guy now, a person I've never known. I've always loved him. He's always been a real gentleman. There's a spiritual shift in this guy, and it saved his life. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that after we got him clean, he had you in his life to really, as I tell families, right, getting somebody into recovery is different from getting someone to stay in recovery. And so having somebody like you is, I think, the absolute key to keeping somebody in recovery.
You're very kind.
It's the truth.
Guys, like and share this. We're about to get into talking about what the Marchman Act is, and how you can use it if you need it, or if you have loved ones or family and friends. And honestly, now's the time to like and share this. And I hear a lot of people that don't understand it, including myself.
Right.
I'm excited to hear more about it myself, and so we have an expert here, Mark Astor, a drug and alcohol attorney. There you go. And I have Gary Kay, our Director of Recovery Education
Programs.
And we're here with Comprehensive Wellness Centers in Lantana, Florida. So please like and share this. So let's take this step by step a little bit, right?
Yes.
So where would we start with this? Okay, so you're a family member and you have a loved one that is out of control of their own lives.
Right.
And so where do we go from there?
It could also be someone who's been through the treatment merry-go-round. They don't stay, they're always bouncing, they're AMAing, they won't complete a program, or they refuse to go to treatment. And it basically forces them to go into treatment and complete a treatment program.
What is the qualifying, I guess I don't know if that's a starting point, or I'd like to know what qualifies someone from calling on me and just having people show up in my room and they just don't like me and they just said that we want him Marchman acted or something. So
what a great question.
I guess just where does it start from a family member that's kind of at wit's end? What do they do?
Right. So basically, if you've got a son or a daughter in the family who is currently using, and they're either a danger to themselves or somebody else, they would meet Marchman Act Criteria. Somebody like this young man we talked about who flatlined, right, a couple of times, and I think it was pretty close to the time we Marchman acted him.
Yes.
He's a danger to himself, right? But obviously, if he's out of control and maybe acting out and a threat to somebody else, and it's because he's using, then he's going to meet Marchman Act Criteria. So the first step is typically to meet with the family. Now, because Florida, we've been bringing a lot of people, from out of state, right, up the East Coast and even as far west as California. A lot of the time, I'll get a call from a mom or a dad. They're out of state, but their kids down here. They've come for treatment and they walked out. So sometimes I don't always get to meet the mom and dad right out of the gate. Sometimes it's a conversation over the telephone. So in our office, we do what we call triaging the case. I kind of got that from my brother, who's a doctor. He's a resident at Mount Sinai.
Oh, okay.
Before that, he was a holistic medical practitioner, and he used to talk to you about how, you know, you take a very holistic approach to the patient. Right? Let's find out what's really going on, and you can't do that in 5 minutes over the phone. So we spent at least a couple of hours on the phone with the mum or the dad to get a full history. So I mean, I need to know, you know, what's really going on here. I mean, the case may present as an addiction case, but maybe there's trauma going on. Maybe there's, you know, mental illness, bipolar, schizophrenia. Something's going on here that's triggered this, and I need to know that because that may affect where we ultimately send the person for treatment, right? So we spend a couple of hours on the phone with mum and dad. If the case meets the criteria, right, and I need to know that because if it doesn't, I'm going to tell the family, listen, it doesn't meet Marchman Act criteria, maybe something else we can do for you, but not a Marchman Act. So once we've determined there's a Marchman Act, this is a Marchman Act case, I'm going to draft a petition. And the petition is going to basically take care of part 1 of the Marchman Act. So part 1 is typically a 5-day hold for a period of assessment and stabilization and detox if it's needed. And that can be done on what we call an ex parte basis. So what that means is that the petition is going to get reviewed for legal sufficiency. If it's legally sufficient, like it was in the case of that gentleman,
Yes.
they're going to get a knock on the door from the local sheriff who's going to take them to a receiving facility where they're going to be held. So the idea being, we're not going to tell the person that the sheriff's coming because obviously that might cause them to run and then we lose them. Well, they might relapse or something else might happen.
Yeah, it's a big surprise. It happens by surprise.
It is a surprise. We do, and
kind of an intervention, you might say.
It's an intervention by the courts.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. We get them picked up, and depending on the county, you know, depends on how quick we can do it. It just so happens in Palm Beach County, they're very, very switched on.
It happened really quick.
I think in that man's, in his case, I think from the time we filed it to the time that the law enforcement came.
24 hours?
Oh, but it was done the same day. It was
the same day.
Wow.
I had him in treatment within 6 hours.
And if that hadn't happened, he'd probably end up dead.
So
he was on a wicked run.
Yeah, he was on a run. So, you know, the clocks are pretty switched on, but it does vary from county to county how quick we can get it done. And each county seems to do it just a little bit differently, so you've got to be nice to the clerks, so they tell you how they like it done. So the first period is going to be assessment and stabilization and detox, 5 to 7 days. The statute says 5 days, or unless there's a hearing set. So if the hearing's not set for another week, they're going to hold them a little past the 5-day window. So that's typically the first part of the Marchman Act.
So when this person gets taken in and put into detox, I mean, they're an adult usually, or in some cases they're an adult.
Right.
I mean, their first thing is like, you have no right to do this to me. So how do they get to understand that, or how does that work? Like, and even if they do understand it, they might be like, I'm leaving detox, I don't care, I'm out of here. So like, how does that work with a person that's like so surprised and didn't think this could ever happen in the United States type of thing?
Well, I know to my friend, the marshal said, do we need cuffs or do you want to just come with us?
Right.
You know.
So that's a really, really good question because it is a civil process, right? It's not criminal. No one's getting arrested. It's a confidential civil process. So in the last 2+ years we've been doing this, and we've done a lot of them, only one person walked out. And we ultimately got that person into treatment as a young man. We got him into treatment.
So even as a civil process, they really can't get arrested if they leave.
No, but the relief if they don't follow the court order is contempt, which is 5 months, up to 5 months and 29.
So they can get arrested.
There is something.
Yes,
yeah,
they can.
It's civil contempt. It's a civil procedure, and the relief is civil contempt. But you know, I'll tell you, in my experience, see, I think this is what's going on here, and this is just from what I've observed. You know, we're subconsciously we're pre-programmed, right? We've got this subconscious mind here that's pre-programmed to keep us safe, and it equates safety with the status quo. You ever go buy a new phone and like for the first week you hate the thing, right? Because now you got to relearn how to do it. We're pre-programmed to not like change, so change is equal to safety. So for an addict, using is safe. So the subconscious mind says we don't want to make change because we like the status quo. That we feel safe with that. But rationally they understand they've got a problem. They need help. So you've got this conflict going on between the rational mind and the subconscious.
Yes.
By doing the Marchman
Prefrontal cortex and the amygdala.
Yeah, and I don't have the. It's just what I say, right?
You're absolutely right.
What happens is when a family member decides to initiate the Marchman Act, you take that conflict away because they haven't had to make the decision. Somebody else made it for them, and all of a sudden there's this sense of relief, like,
yeah,
I don't have to make the decision. Somebody else made it for me.
Right.
And that has been my experience. They are almost glad that somebody else made the decision they couldn't make for themselves. Because
they know they're sick.
They know
we
that.
know we're ill.
But they're having this conflict, this
addiction.
voice in the back of their head says, no, we don't want change. We like what's going on. Even though it's bad for us, our subconscious mind says, no, this is safety, our status quo. And when you make that decision for them, it's a sense of relief. And that's why 9 times out of 10, they will go.
Now, when you say, Rosanna asks, like, what are the specific criteria for a Marchman Act? And you were saying something like they have to be of harm to themselves or others, but the one that was overdosing on the doorstep, well, that's obvious, right? Because he was a harm to himself. If it's just someone that is in a hotel room doing a lot of drugs, is that criteria?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that it is. I'll tell you why. Because obviously these days with the heroin and laced with fentanyl, there's that implied danger, right? I mean, they don't have to have a sticker on the head saying, I'm doing heroin.
So the person doesn't have to be walking down the street just threatening people's lives or threatening themselves. It's just the implied thought that just doing the drugs alone could be a detriment to themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I picked up a young lady, I don't know, a month ago, and when my investigator got there with the police officers, she had needles and pills and heroin stuffed down her bra, and she was covered from head to toe in various marks and bruises and stuff. So,
guys, like and share us. Wow. Again, really good topic here. Mandy says, I have a friend whose life was saved by a Marchman Act. She was ultimately faced with jail or treatment. No question which one she chose. However, she got to treatment, and it gave her a chance to save herself. That's great. Josh, great to see you in here, man. I hope all's going well. I hear you're doing better. Glad to see you here. Like and share us, buddy. And
Is that Josh D?
Yeah.
Josh D, hello. How are you?
Make sure you stop by and say hi, please. I hear you'll be out with Nick tonight, I believe. I'm glad to see you're back in the game. What else was I going to say here? So basically, that's amazing to me that the criteria. So that's step one. The criteria isn't as strict as I thought it was. So that's a real tool a family can use.
Oh, absolutely.
When you
most people don't know about that, and it's only available in Florida and how many other states? 2 or 3 states?
Well, so there are 37 states that have some type of involuntary commitment statute.
Okay.
Some deals with alcohol, some deals with drugs, some deals with mental illness, some deals with all of the above. I happen to think that the Marchman Act, we have the most comprehensive involuntary commitment statute that's out there. I mean, this really, for me, is the model that should be national. But
yeah,
because it deals with addiction, and it also talks about co-occurring mental illness, because as you know, a lot of the time those two things go together, right? I mean,
so one of the reasons I wanted to have you on was because I think the public needs to know about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, right? It's a statute that's been on the books since 1993, and really
few people know about it.
Yeah, few people, families come to me like, we never heard of this. When did this become law?
Right.
That's the commitment.
And when
of
did
this,
it become law?
93.
93.
Yeah.
That's the commitment of of Recovery Talk Live. The whole idea was to provide education and information to families and addicts that are out there that are suffering of different ways that they could get help.
Now, you did say the part one was they end up going to a detox, I guess,
Correct.
initially. Now, is that a recommendation by you or by the family, or does the state or the police department give that, or how is it decided where that person is going to be?
So if you don't,
Excuse me.
So when I draft a petition, I sort of draft it like I would a civil complaint, and I give the judge the criteria, what's going on. Here are the full facts. I mean, my petition's pretty lengthy. When the judge sees my petition, they know what's coming, right? They know they're going to get the full history, so it's an easy decision for them. But part and parcel of that is telling the judge what you want, right? I put it under, here's the relief, right? Your Honor, I want you to send this person to this place.
Okay.
Here's the relief. Otherwise they're going to a county facility. Now, God bless the folks that work in those facilities, but at the end of the day, those folks are overworked and underpaid, and my experience is, and it's not because they're bad, it's just they just have so much going on that if you send the child's going to a county receiving facility, for the most part, probably not going to get as good a job done as you would if you went to a private facility, which means either you got the money or you have insurance. I mean, which is, as I've told Dave Ehrenberg, our great state attorney, that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I mean,
yes.
And maybe that's a topic for a different day, but, if they've got insurance or there's money there and we can designate a private, receiving facility, then I'm going to tell the judge, okay, when the sheriff picks them up, That's
going
where
to this place.
Yeah, that's where they go.
Right.
And
So if they do have private insurance or self-pay, you don't have to, you could pick a private program
Yes.
or something like
yes, and that, that's part and parcel of really triaging the case, is having the conversation with mum and dad. Listen, do you pay or do you have insurance? Because I mean, if they've got insurance, right, then the insurance might dictate where we're sending them, because maybe insurance will pay for that detox or that receiving facility, but it's not going to pay for this one. And so sometimes that comes into play, right?
Right.
So you got to have the conversation. You need to know that, because I can't file a petition and say, well, where do you want me to send them? Because if you don't tell them, I know where they're going. They're going to the county facility, and then mum and dad are not going to be happy with the result.
So even if a person's from out of state and their family's from out of state and their insurance is from out of state, but they're in the state of Florida, they could be Marchman Acted here, or do they have to have permanent residence here?
No, so the jurisdiction of the Marchman Act is determined by where they're physically located.
Wow.
So if you're standing in
Is this interesting?
yeah,
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it is.
Because we have situations here at our treatment center where, unfortunately, we have people that, in some cases they've left, and the families are in another city. They're scared. They're like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? We know where they're potentially at sometimes, and they're like, what do we do? What do we do? And like, I never knew I could do anything about it except say, like, you can fly down here and I could tell you, I didn't, and even if they fly down here, I don't know what luck they're. I didn't know that I could literally have them contact someone like you, and
Right.
And get something like this. Maybe do an assessment and see if it's something they can move forward with.
Right, and so a lot of the time, if you're sending your child here, right? I mean, you can actually skip part one. You can just ask the judge for a court order to make sure they're in treatment and stay in treatment, and we can talk about that in a second. But I think that's a terrific safety
And
net.
stay in treatment.
Yeah, I think that if you're sending your child,
Brilliant.
1,000 miles, 2,000 miles, 3,000 miles to come to treatment here, if you don't have any safety net, to me that's insanity.
Right, because they could just bail.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your child lands at Fort Lauderdale Airport, they come to the treatment center, bang, I hit them with a court order. Guess what? You have to be in front of a judge in 3 days. Your Honor, we go in front of the judge. Judge, they meet Marchman Act Criteria, they're here voluntarily, but we want a court order in place, and here's why.
So they have to complete treatment.
So they stay.
So even though they voluntarily came here for treatment, you could actually provide a safety net that said
Yes,
that then
they
court
can't. They
orders
have to
them
complete treatment.
they have to complete it.
Correct. So I probably wouldn't bother at that point with part one, which is
Amazing,
the ex
right?
parte.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'd go straight to the next part, the second part, which is a request for treatment services.
Mhm.
And say, Judge, I want you to order them into treatment. Now, if they stay in treatment, right, they follow the rules, no problem. If they don't and they walk out, well, then I'm going to be coming back to you, Your Honor. I'm going to want to have a contempt proceeding because now they're not staying in treatment.
And with contempt, they have a warrant put out.
Well, I have to give them notice, so I have to let them know there's going to be a hearing because they're entitled to contest it.
Right.
Now, if somebody walks out of treatment, I'm going to tell the treatment center, call 911.
Right.
Get the police looking for them straight away because there's a possibility something terrible could happen, and worst case scenario, I send my private investigator to go find them.
But like you said, that's far and few between. I mean, usually they're wanting the help at that point, and it kind of provides them the added push maybe they need.
Absolutely.
Knowing that,
We know we're sick. When we're in active addiction, there's a part of your being that you're sick and that things aren't right.
Right. I mean, you don't let them walk out and then follow the Marchman Act. You want to do it, once while you know where they are.
And guys, I want to say share and like this. This is a great topic. Let's see here. Maria, one of our therapists here, says the Marchman Act indeed saves many. It saves both the individual and the family.
Yes.
Right. I want to say again, people that are just joining us, we're at Comprehensive Wellness Centers here in Lantana, Florida. We're a treatment center that offers many different services. You can check us out at cwcrecovery.com. I have Gary Kay here, our Director of Recovery Education. That's the hardest title for me. It's just not a normal title, is it?
No, it isn't. Nothing normal
Director
about
of
Gary
Operations is easier or something. And I have Mark Astor here, a alcohol and drug attorney or drug and alcohol attorney. Either way is right.
Right.
And a go-to leading expert in the Marchman Act.
Gino's in the house. He says, "Hey
Gino.
family, love you, Jason and Gary. You both are
love
amazing
you too.
people."
Thank you. God bless
Gino, like and share us. Great to see you, buddy. Hope you stop by one of these days. So, where were we? are we at part 2?
We're getting to part
Let's
2.
get to part 2, even though that was a lot on part 1.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
It is. It's fascinating. I knew you'd just find this incredibly fascinating.
I think it's going to be really helpful, actually.
Yes.
I'm surprised. We got to talk about your marketing to some treatment centers and stuff, because as a treatment owner, I've heard about this and I had no clue what it was about, you know. And it actually, when I did ask people,
really important.
They made it sound like it was like this really complicated piece of work you had to fill out.
It's complicated.
Right. Well, they're like, there's this whole big
but
thing
he's
you have
the
to
pro.
fill. Yeah, and that's amazing. That's amazing.
And he can get it done quickly.
And the fact that it can be done in such a quick period.
Mark also has a juice card with the judicial system here in Florida. So
there you go.
He can
gets
get it. It gets done with lightning speed.
I wasn't going to tell anybody about my juice card, but now you've told the rest of the world. Everybody else is going to want one too.
So anyway, going to part 2. So the patient or the individual or client is in detox, and then what happens from there?
So I'll file a second petition, and basically the relief now is, Judge, we want you to order that person to treatment, and this is where we want you to send them.
Okay.
So it's the responsibility of the receiving facility to do an assessment and file that assessment with the clerk, so that when we go into court, the judge already knows what the recommendation is, and if it's a contested hearing, which 1 out of 10 is contested, again because most of the time they're just glad, they're down there already. First of all, they've just spent 7 days probably detoxing, right? So they're starting to think a little more clearly. I mean, that individual that we talked about, when I first saw him, I couldn't believe it was the same young man. Based on what I knew about him. I said, look how clean cut this kid, he was clean cut, he looked good, he was intelligent, bright, and I'm like, have that, but that's what happens, and it happens in a very brief period of time.
Right.
So they start to think more rationally. So more often than not, when we're in that hearing, 8, 9 times out of 10, they agree to go. Because they're thinking rationally, they realize they need to go.
Right.
So, and every once in a while we have to have a hearing, which is a bit like a small trial. And I'll have mum or dad sit next to me, and there's the young son or daughter on the other side of the courtroom, and if they can't afford a lawyer, the court's going to give them one, because they're entitled to counsel, and we'll have a small hearing, then we get it ordered that way. Okay.
And so once you have that order, then they go to treatment.
Right. A lot of what I try to do is make sure that the treatment provider is there in the courthouse, so when the judge orders it, they go from the courtroom to the treatment center. I don't want any time between. I don't want any time between the time I file to the time they get to treatment.
Okay.
Because any time between there where there's a gap where maybe they get out, there's a chance for a relapse.
And you're communicating with the client the whole time, or how does the client know what's happening while he's in there? Like once he's been ordered into detox, does he just kind of sit there and hope where does he know what's happening?
So client's mum or dad, right? So their petitioners, the child respondent. So in terms of knowing what's going on, from a medical perspective, obviously they have HIPAA, which is our federal privacy law for medical records, and we have a Florida equivalent. So I won't know the specifics, right? And if they haven't waived, in other words, if they haven't waived their right to share what's going on, I'm probably not going to see the assessment. I'll have an idea what's going on, but not all the details. You hope that when they go in there, the treatment center is going to ask them to at least waive the privilege so that we can see what's going on. If we need to, we can also file a guardianship petition, which will give us access to those records, but we can talk about that in a second, but that's another option we give the families. So, I may not see the assessment, but I know what's going on, and I know there's going to be a hearing because I'm going to be the one scheduling it. So,
Marion Hurst Sharon says, "Thank you, Gary and Mark, for all your hard work. You truly save lives. You are the best."
Love you, Marion.
Kaylee Elizabeth says, "Hey, gentlemen." So, now are you done at that point? Now let's say they completed their 30 days. What happens? Are we at part 3 now, or are we?
So there's no part 3, but
so this is just fascinating.
Yeah, I love it.
So the Marchman Act statute allows for up to 90 days of treatment, and if you get to day 79 and you still need more time, you can ask for another 90 days. So it gives you up to 180 days.
Now you may or may not know this question, or the answer to this question, but if they're Marchman acted and then they're given a court order and the court accepts that they've been asked to do 90 days of treatment and they have private insurance, is the insurance obligated to cover that much treatment? Because we know how insurance has gotten a little bit difficult.
Great question.
Yeah,
no, is the short answer, right? So, look, that, really that comes down to having a conversation with the treatment provider, because I think we all understand that insurance is probably not going to cover more than 30 days. And from my experience, from what the children tell me, the sons and daughters, because I get a chance, I speak to all of them, including the younger men. I ask them, I try to find out what's going on, right? And I let them know, look, I'm not the big bad guy trying to put you in jail. I'm trying to help you, right? And that conversation normally happens right before the treatment hearing.
Our friend, by the way, thought you were great.
Yeah, he was a really nice young
He
man.
wasn't happy in the beginning.
They never are.
No one loves him
But
in the
he's
beginning.
very grateful
Well,
now
but
and just
not
thought you
before.
were tremendous to work with. So
Yeah, so
said
look,
you treated him with
So
such
you need to find a treatment
integrity,
center that
kindness.
basically understands that, even though they may only get a certain amount by the insurance, and maybe the family can only maybe give nothing more than that, or they can give a little bit additionally, that they're still understand that the client needs a certain amount of help.
right, and so if the treatment order is up to 90 days, right, then it maybe there's 30 days of residential followed by some type of step down for the next 60 days.
Exactly.
Which financially is going to be better, and perhaps insurance is going to cover it. And having someone like Gary makes those 60 days a whole lot safer than if you don't have your own Gary, right?
Right,
That's
exactly.
very kind.
It's the truth. It's the truth, right?
If you don't have your own Gary, call me.
Yeah. Borrow this one. We'll let you borrow it. You can't keep it, but you can borrow it.
Definitely can't keep them.
Isn't that amazing to have the opportunity, the option of being able to keep them for 180 days? Because we know that the longer a person stays in treatment and does that work, their chances of sustaining long-term recovery increase exponentially day by day, the longer they're in there.
Now, if you've been Marchman Acted once, can you be Marchman Acted again?
Yes.
Is there a time frame?
No.
No.
There's no limit.
You ask the best questions.
He does. And you know what? He's making me
You're
think
very
too.
good.
These
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
You know what's funny? I've read the Marchman Act statute. If I've read it once, I've read it 100 times. And every time I read it, I learn something new. And so I appreciate these questions because I'm like, I know I read that.
So within a year, you could be Marchman Acted twice, let's say, if a family chooses to do so.
Right. Obviously, if there's a relapse, that's what we
Right.
consider a change in circumstances and additional grounds to get a new petition, filed and granted.
Wow. Now, okay, I got to go here a little bit. This isn't free.
No.
So what would it, how does that work? If someone was wanting to do this and they came to you, is there a range about, or is it or is there a flat fee, or there's
I charge a flat fee. It's the same fee I charge everybody else. So I charge my retainer, which
Right.
basically covers you soup to nuts, whether I go to work 1 hour or 100 hours. And
okay.
It's never 1 hour, right?
Right.
There's normally, I would say, 5 to 8 hours of work before we even see the courtroom.
Right.
And then I take a cost deposit, right, which covers, there's no filing fee, but there's going to be expenses. Like I got to get a processor around to serve them. If I'm using my private investigator to really expedite things, he charges a few bucks, but he's worth every penny because that's the difference between getting it done the same day and taking 3 days, right?
Right.
The difference between life and death. So,
Right. And the peace of
That's the
mind
thing.
is there's no cost. There's
That's the
no
thing.
price on that.
yes, it really isn't. People are coming to me as a last resort, and I want to get results.
This person that we've been talking about that recently was Marchman Acted. We knew he was going to die. He was on such a run, and it was going to take one more episode, and he's gone, and we're going
Right.
to lose him. And we could have filed ourselves, but it's complicated. I don't think any of us could have wrapped our heads around that, myself or the parents, and actually accomplished that. Probably would have taken weeks, and the kid would have been dead.
Right. And I've had families come to me
But
after.
Mark, it's done. It's done, and he's in the sheriff's car, and Bob's your uncle. He's in the treatment center doing step work.
Families are coming to me to get it done quickly and to get it done correctly, right? And also, if there's sort of a relapse or leaving against medical advice, to enforce it, right?
As we had touched on earlier today, with what's in the heroin, with carfentanil and fentanyl, the next bag, the next snort, the next cap, the next tiny injection, what small amount of heroin that they might do, they're dead. So there's no wiggle room to wait a week or another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It has to happen immediately.
James, thanks for joining us. I'm glad to see you here. Cam, glad to see you here. I see you're already sharing Facebook accounts, which that happened kind of quickly, but congratulations on that. Good to see you, buddy. I always like when you stop by. Thanks for saying hi today. Anybody, please, any questions you may have regarding the Marchman Act for Mark, or any questions for Gary regarding what he does here at Comprehensive Wellness Centers. Do you have any questions additionally for Mark?
No, this is just fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled to learn more about this.
You know, it doesn't. When he called me, he said, "Can you come?" Of course, I come on the show. You want me to talk about the Marchman Act? No problem.
Right.
I'm here.
Now, how many?
He didn't hesitate.
You said it's increased. You've been doing this a couple of years with the Marchman Act. Like, what? Can you give us an approximate? I mean, would it be too much? Is it too much privacy to ask, like, about how many you do a year?
God, let me do the math here.
Or how much it's increased over the years with what's going on?
I would say this year we probably averaged. I bet we've been averaging 4 a month.
Wow.
3-4 a month.
Wow.
So let me do the math. What's that?
Yeah.
40 and 50.
Wow.
I think there'd be a lot more being done if more people knew
Yeah,
about it.
I mean, I
Parents don't know that tool is out.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of them. And what's interesting is probably the last 2 months, you know, we were always focused on Palm Beach and Broward County. The last month especially, we were in Marion County. I got one in Orlando right now, so we're sort of spreading. And, you know, the technology really helps us to do that, because way back when I first started practicing, you know, if I wanted to file paperwork and say Orlando in Orange County, I had to mail it to the clerk. It was a whole process. These days, we have an electronic filing system. I do it right from my laptop. One click of a button, the e-file system files it in any county I want to. So, I mean, I had somebody pick up in Orlando. Great.
Another thing I think that's brilliant about it, instead of waiting until the addict commits a crime, well, doing the drugs is a crime, but I mean goes out and does some heinous thing, and then they're arrested and thrown in prison, and they're remanded to treatment by a judge because they're now a criminal, the families or friends can stop that from happening before it happens, you know,
right,
and get them into treatment, not as a criminal, just as a sick addict.
Yeah, and I do get those calls sometimes. You know, mum or dad will call me and say, "Oh, my child's in custody. Can I Marchman them?" Well, no. I mean, it's
Too late.
well, yeah. I mean, it's not that it's too late. So they're in custody. So now the criminal system basically has a hold on them. So you know, and then I say, look, maybe we should talk about you representing your son or your daughter on that criminal case, and let's get him into treatment with that avenue. Let's have him court ordered in the criminal system into treatment.
Do you have the ability to Marchman Act people in different states? I mean, or you have to work with other attorneys in those states.
Right. I mean, it varies by state by state. I've heard Colorado has a pretty comprehensive type of involuntary commitment statute, but I'm not licensed there, so I mean, I'd have to refer somebody to.
So they mostly have to be in the state of Florida.
They got to be in
time.
Florida. Oh yeah, they got to be in Florida, because then otherwise, you know, and it's done county by county. So if someone's physically located in Broward, I'm filing in Broward. I could have them sent somewhere else for treatment, which I've done. I've had them sent, you know.
So the addict has to physically be in Florida.
Right. So.
What if they're from Florida, they're on a run on a road trip, and they're
Gonna be a problem, right? So typically, if somebody's, let's say they're located in Palm Beach County, I'm gonna have them picked up in Palm Beach County where they're located. They're taken to a receiving facility in Palm Beach County, right? So because the sheriff, whichever agency picked them up, only has authority in Palm Beach County, right?
Right.
Once they get into the county, they're just civilians. So for the most part, so they're not going to go outside of their jurisdiction. When it comes to the treatment portion, I can get them sent. I haven't sent anybody out of state yet, but I know we can get it done. I've had them sent all over the state.
All right.
We were working on another one together, I think, and you were going to send them to Texas. I don't remember who that was.
So that, which treatment center it was, or which person? I mean, there are.
I don't remember which person. I remember the treatment
I'm
center
trying
with
to
the
think.
music.
Yes, Recovery Unplugged.
Recovery
That's a place in
Unplugged.
Texas.
Recovery Unplugged.
Yeah, they're in Brown, but they're also a place in Texas, and sometimes sending somebody out of state is not necessarily a bad thing. First of all, if they run, where they're running to, they don't know anybody.
Right.
And two, just getting them out of their environment, right?
Yeah.
Away from the friends that are, you know, not good for them.
Yeah, you talk about that all the time, Gary, about
absolutely.
like, you know, especially when people come down here and are doing very well, sometimes, you know, it's not great to go right back into the situation.
No, it's a terrible idea.
Right. And
It can be done, but it's very difficult.
Right, and we've even had people say, "Oh, I'm going to return home for a hurricane or something."
Their chances are less than average.
Or they've gone home for a week and it doesn't end up so well sometimes.
Almost never.
Yeah.
It's the exception to the rule.
Right.
When they go back soon, before they actually have recovery happening and change happening in their brain and a solid wall of defense, and that they've incorporated recovery tools into their life, they go back home. Before that, any stressful situation that comes up, even just seeing the skyline of the city they're from, inflames the amygdala. That's what triggers are all about, and the brain starts screaming for drugs because it's a go-to.
Tammy Vangelinos, I don't know if I'm saying that right. God bless you and all you do for others. Going home, Caitlin says, going home without recovery first hurts. So, you know,
Does.
I guess, yeah, you need some recovery before you go home.
Absolutely.
A question: Our insurance? We touched on insurance, but do you know if insurance companies are more likely to approve treatment for someone who is Marchman acted, or you don't know any studies?
I don't know that. It's a really good question, though.
I think from my experience, not that I've seen that, but I think that it would. I mean, they're looking for medical necessity, and if a court system was willing to Marchman Act somebody over, you know,
There's
and we
clearly
attach that
medical
to the file,
necessity, yeah.
I think they would see that there's definite medical necessity because,
No doubt.
you know, they're basically saying, you know, you're of harm to someone else or yourself.
Right.
You know.
That means your addiction is
So, I
progressed.
mean, I know it's not something you might not have statistics on, but I would bet you that the insurance company is as hard as they become on approving some treatment, you know, that would definitely be something that would help. You know, I don't know if they'd cover the entire time, you know, but they would definitely
and
help.
they may only cover the treatment portion, not necessarily the detox portion.
Exactly.
It depends on the insurance company. But I would think, there's a court order there, and that at some point, you know, they're going to have to deal with this anyway. Maybe now's the time to pay.
What's your percentage of
Right.
private insurance and self-pay compared to people with no insurance or, it's more private insurance, obviously,
Yeah,
right?
it really is.
Yeah.
It is.
That's just
I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I mean, I wish it wasn't.
right.
But it really is kind of that's the problem, right? I mean, treatment.
Are there any subsidies for the Marchman Act, or is there anything like from the state that they provide any services for people without the funds, or no, or it's just
No, I think for folks that don't have the cash payer insurance, I think they sort of rely on the graciousness of what I still believe is a great treatment industry down here. You know, there's plenty of insurances that do scholarship, that will scholarship, if they can and they're able to do it, they will.
I'm seeing a need for a new nonprofit.
oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Because someone did just ask, what
To
if you
find
have no
scholarships
insurance?
for Marchman
And
Acts.
like you said, there's many places, including ourselves here, that offer scholarships throughout the year, depending on the situation. And I know a lot of other treatment centers as well offer scholarships. Or there's also state-run facilities, even though there are different different levels. But I've heard people that sometimes do really well in state-run facilities. Yeah. And then there's also some in-network plans, or
I have friends who had tremendous ego issues, who could not surrender and had zero humility. And going to a state-run facility was what they needed to crack through that ego and humble them.
Right. I mean, if there's a
they
debt
put them
there-
on a slop sink,
Right.
washing dishes, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe this is happening to me."
Yeah, well, I've heard,
That's what
honestly,
did the
some
trick.
of the people that end up finally being in and out of places that finally have to go to a state facility tend to say, like, I don't want to,
You're done. This
I'm
is
done.
It.
This
End
isn't
of the
like,
road.
this isn't like Club Med anymore.
That's
I
right.
guess.
End of the road.
So,
No chef.
Caitlin
at that
asked, what are
facility.
scholarships? Scholarships are, how would you describe it in, like, we're giving away, basically, as a treatment center, we're offering at no cost to an individual that doesn't have the financial resources, that can show that they don't have the financial resources or to get their own insurance. We offer them, a specified amount of time in treatment at no cost to them, and a scholarship is basically like we're doing that with no cost to that individual. It is hard to get scholarships, but
It is.
if an individual shows enough effort and works hard, and really proves that they're willing to get better, there's nonprofits out there and there's treatment centers out there that do have those opportunities. Does anybody have any last minute questions? If you do, let me know now. Mark, you have any last closing comments? We're kind of at the end here.
So I get a chance to share some of the other things that we're doing.
Yeah, please.
Awesome.
I was going to say that, but I didn't know we might, it was so exciting, some of the things he was talking about. We could have a
I'm
whole
so
other
glad
show.
you.
But yeah, tell us a
knew
little
you'd
bit about what else you're doing.
love this.
So a couple of things that are sort of in the works. I mean, obviously we realized that addiction. I realized that from my own experience, right? I lost my dad at the beginning of the year, but for 2 years before that, my mum and I were busy either calling 911 or rushing him to the emergency room. And I noticed, you know, as my father would be lying there with tubes and machines hooked up to him, right, that as a family we were in emotional crisis. I would look at my mother or my brother or my sister, I would see that look in their eyes. And the first time I sat with a family who had a child who was dealing with addiction, I saw the exact same look. And I realized that addiction is like any other disease, and that it affects everybody in the family. And so you have to take a very holistic approach to this. And you have to realize that if you're helping the addict, you got to help the family too, because the unit's slowly being eroded, right? And so, you know, there are a couple of things that we really wanted to address. Several months ago, I noticed I started to see that some of the states were suing the pharmaceutical companies. And I was like, well, that's nice, good for the states. What about mom and dad whose kid overdosed, right? What about mom and dad whose child died? Who's helping them?
Right.
So, you know, I went to a local law firm here in town that does mass tort work, and I sat and talked to the lawyer. And
Does what kind of work?
What we call mass tort, class action lawsuits, where there's hundreds and thousands of people all involved in the same lawsuit. And what we did was we came up with you know, we came up with a plan of action, and we're going to be suing on behalf of individual families, the pharmaceutical companies, to hold them responsible for what they've done. Because they
created this epidemic.
They did.
Large part.
You know, I mean, listen, you go and buy a box of cigarettes, what does it have on them?
They're
It's a warning. It says, this
culpable.
stuff causes cancer.
100%.
You go get pain pills. There's no warning on there. They don't tell you
This
this.
epidemic was a business
They
strategy.
don't tell you it's addictive. Okay? And
Well,
now,
someone told me that, you know, we're 5% of the world's population, and we are 95% of the world's opiate, oxycodone users, or pain pill.
Right.
So, like, that's incredible.
They marketed it to
Yeah.
us. They created
marketed
this
it to
situation.
us, yeah.
Absolutely, 100%
right.
they did.
So we're about getting some justice for the individual
That's
families.
awesome.
So it's not going to be just Florida. It's going to be nationwide, and we're going to.
Can I get you to consider suing the health insurance companies for when I try to get someone treatment and they're saying, no, we'll only give him 2 days of treatment.
You know,
And then he goes out and dies.
Wow.
You know, that's.
Wow.
You ask a lot of good questions. So
That's a mic drop.
I will tell you, I was contacted by another lawyer who does that type of mass tort litigation, and there's some conversation about that. I can't tell you exactly what it is because we don't know yet, but that question is certainly
Because
been
that's
raised.
the thing, as a person
That
that
would
just
just be
drives
amazing.
me crazy. Just even if I wasn't in this business, I mean, these people are paying for insurance a lot of money, and then when they actually need it,
They won't give it.
they won't
help.
give it, and then they're
And the kid
deciding
dies.
medical necessity
Yeah.
more than they ever have when they're not even following the guidelines set out by
Right.
ASAM or
And it's
whatever.
life and death, and then the kid goes out and
I'm
dies.
like, and I'm telling them, or our people are saying to them, you know that, you know, he's going to go out there. He's telling us he's going to go out there and use and.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, it's not a person to them, you know, so I've always wondered, like, what recourse they have. And I've been told, you know, you have no recourse against the insurance companies. I mean, you have no recourse. And so I was like, that's amazing that
They
can,
own the world.
they can decide somebody's life or death really at that moment.
Yes, they can.
And even when people are paying for insurance, so.
So that might be in the works. We'll see.
That's,
We'll see.
you have some big what else are you working on?
So, you know, I have a wonderful lawyer who's here with us.
Okay.
My colleague Audra, who is my guardianship lawyer. So sometimes we do guardianship work to help families get control of what we consider an out-of-control situation, gives them control over finances and medical records and things of that nature. But she also does, estate planning, trusts, and things of that nature. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to help families who have had children who have, you know, been dealing with addiction and mental illness, and help them plan for the future, right? So, you know, you get your child in recovery, and then 20, 30 years down the line, mom and or dad shuffles off the planet, and there's no sort of safety net, right? So if son or daughter relapses, we want to make sure there's finances there, right, that can pay for the treatment if it's needed, but also we want to have some protection because if there are other siblings, other beneficiaries, right, who want access to mom and dad's, you know, assets, that the assets don't get depleted to feed the addiction. So, you know, we're starting to work closely with a financial planner who specifically does financial planning for these types of families, and we're going to step in and do the legal work that's necessary to set up the legal entity so that, you know, if son or daughter does relapses, you know, there's the protection there financially, and if they don't, well then that's great, no harm, no foul, everybody's happy. So, you know, we want to help the families now, but we also want to think a little bit further down the line what happens, because as we know, sometimes relapses occur, okay, and so we want to be a little bit proactive and prepare for that type of thing. And, you know, if it doesn't, then it's a beautiful thing. Listen, if you got Gary K,
Oh,
your chances are better.
Yeah,
You're
a lot
good.
better.
You're good to me.
A lot better. How do people contact you besides just looking you up? I mean, do you have a website they can go visit? What is that? Why don't you tell everybody?
So it's drug and alcohol attorneys with an s.com, drugandalcoholattorneys.com, or you can call our office, and the number is 561-419-6095. That's 561-419-6095. And if you're calling about the opioid litigation, tell my receptionist I'm calling about the opioid litigation, because we have a specific paralegal who handles that.
That's great.
And she'll want to take the information.
Mark Astor, A-S-T-O-R.
Yes, thank you.
Warrior.
I'm working on it.
He's a warrior.
Well, thank you for being here, and we'd love to maybe
Thank
have
you.
you back and talk about some of these other
God
things
bless
as
you
well.
for what you're doing.
Thank you.
It was great. I could talk about this a long.
I just knew you'd find it
I'm
interesting.
sure we'll be talking outside of here, but thank you again for being here. Thank you, Gary, for
You're
being
welcome.
here. One of our mothers is in here, says thank you.
You're
You know,
welcome.
so that's what we really want to do is
You're very welcome.
have some of the family members be in here and see what other options they have or options they have. We'll see you. Will we see them next Thursday? Yes, next Thursday.
Next Thursday, 5 p.m.
I might not be here, but Gary will.
I will be here come hell or high water. Don't drink and drive. Call your sponsor.
Thank you guys. Good night.